thank you for joining us today, the Thursday, the 26th of August. My name is Arnold Kwizera, and this is part of our lead series and brought to you by Access to Finance Rwanda in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth and Culture and, of course, MasterCard Foundation. Now, today's conversation, which should be very, very enriching, is going to focus on the status of youth in financial inclusion in Rwanda. And just to give you just a little bit of context, these demographics have been growing at an average pace of about 15 to 20%, depending on where you're looking at your stats from over the past 3-4 years among the young people. But surprisingly, young people are still the most left out when it comes to financial inclusion in Rwanda. So we hope today's conversation will help us tackle some of these key points. We'll look at, a few key takeaways from the report. We'll look at practical solutions. We are here for solutions. It's that time of the year when we start planning for the next year. So definitely we should be having solutions. We'll also look at the role of young people in what used to be termed as blue-collar work. Here we're talking about things like agriculture. And I think Regis Omugiraneza, who is the vice chair of the Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs at the Private Sector Federation and a member of the Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum, will help us dissect and break that down furthermore. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our host today, the person who leads the organization responsible for getting all of us here together, Mr. Jean Bosco Iyachu, who is the CEO of Access to Finance Rwanda, to give us his opening remarks. Over to you, Mr. Jean Bosco Iyachu.
Yes, thank you, Arnold, and good morning to you all. Honorable Emmanuel Wigenimana, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Youth and Culture. Madam Rika Rugigamba, Country Head, the MasterCard Foundation, who happens to be also among my founders. Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, a very good morning to you all and welcome to this important and long-awaited webinar on Rwanda Youth Financial Lives Report, which is a subset of the 2020 Finscope survey report. As you may be aware, here at Access to Finance Rwanda, we have been conducting Finscope surveys every 4 years since 2008. And the last report was produced and disseminated in 2020 during the distressing situation of COVID-19 we are all trying to cope with. The original survey that was conducted back in 2008 clearly highlighted an alarming fact where Rwandan adult population that was excluded at that time from the financial sector was around 52%. Imagine, half of the adult population was not being served by the financial sector. So this was by then a wake-up call to most of the stakeholders within the financial sector to design policies, strategies, interventions to bridge the gap. And that's when we immediately started as AFR, as a special purpose vehicle really to support promotion of financial inclusion across the country and financial sector development. But also at that same time, you saw the movement around Umurenge circles and so many other initiatives across the financial sector. So today, I'm more than delighted to remind ourselves that now 93% of adult population in Rwanda have access to and use financial services and products. And we only remain with a gap of 7%, which I believe should be kind of addressed in the near future. So AFR's research agenda has been vital in providing evidence that facilitates decision-making within the Rwanda's financial sector And when you look at it, looking at the last report that we produced on Finscope, more than 2,500 people have already downloaded the report. And that means that they are really reading evidence that is there to be able to design products, to be able to design solutions beyond products that can meet the needs of the people that need financial services. So this has usually contributed to a number of programs that have played a key role in making the financial sector more inclusive and robust, and you can testify this in the market. So coming back to what brought us together today, or this morning, the need for investment in young people in Africa and in Rwanda particularly is widely accepted. And there's no really discussion about that. Everyone wants to support the young generation. And it is a life stage that should be prioritized, not only for the chronic deprivations currently being experienced by people in this phase of their lives, but for the foundations it sets for the life thereafter. So it's very paramount that different stakeholders really focus on this segment of the population. So interventions targeting young people may deliver some impact, but for them to benefit youth in a sustainable and scalable way, it is required that interventions address systemic constraints that may apply to both youth and non-youth, but which will have a greater impact on youth because they are relatively disadvantaged or advantaged in a certain way. This is the focus of today's discussion, which is with knowledgeable and experienced presenters, contributors, and panelists. And I believe we shall come up with concrete recommendations that will facilitate design and deployment of programs that will benefit youth in a transformational and sustainable way. On behalf of AFR, my board, the staff at AFR who have been working hard, and my funders mainly, I welcome you all to this session, and we look forward to your valuable contribution. Thank you, and over to you, Arnold.
Thank you very much. Our host today, the CEO of Access to Finance Rwanda, Mr. John Bosco Iyachu. Mr. John Bosco Iyachu makes a very interesting point, and I just want to quote. I was reading a book about 2 weeks ago on financial literacy and financial inclusion in young people. The book was written by one Finscope, who has written a series just like what we've started today. And in there was a quote, one particular quote where he says, it takes more than financial literacy to truly help people work towards a stronger financial situation. Now, his keys were attention must also focus on behavioral change. And I think behavior change is one of the things that we are going to talk about today. And talking about what's going to lead our discussion today, it's that survey that Mr. John Bosco hinted on. And the person to present this survey is Access to Finance Rwanda's own Mr. Ephraim Rutagarama. Ephraim will give you just 20 minutes, not all of our time, please. So Ephraim will be taking us through this survey and the findings of which we are going to base to have our conversation later on, our panel discussion with a distinguished group of panelists to set the tone. So over to you, Mr. Ephraim Rutagarama, to set the tone for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Arnold and the team here, all the panelists. I would like to thank you so much for being present. So as here to welcome the participant and the panelists and also the stakeholders, I would like to take you through the research we did as our CEO highlighted the findings. We did a deep dive analysis to analyze the level of financial inclusion in the lens of looking youth, how are financially included, what are the barriers, what are the drivers of financial inclusion. Of course, we end up this presentation having a lot of recommendations targeting different institutions, government, and non-profit organization, of course, all audience and particular who are engaged in the development of Rwanda. Without further ado, and we are going to look at the background. Of course, the background was Yatra has highlighted the background, the story, the journey of Finscope, and the profile of youth in Rwanda, drivers of financial inclusion, and also financial inclusion, Finscope access to see the strand where when you compare youth versus the rest of the population, who is included and who is excluded. And of course, the end we end up the presentation with key recommendations. So the IATRA highlighted the story of the Finscope. We started to conduct the Finscope in 2008, and now the recent one is in 2020. And then this Finscope Youth Thematic Report is a deep dive analysis of the results of 2020 survey. The purpose of the survey is to see the level of financial inclusion, landscape of access and usage, identify the barriers and drivers of financial inclusion. Of course, looking the access changes over time. Of course, we compared the results with the 2016 data set to see the changes. And opportunities are there. What are the opportunities are there for youth to be included? This is about the methodology. We had a representative sample at national level, around 12,048,800. So which is a representative sample, and the results was approved by the National Institute of Statistics to validate the accuracy and the credibility of this report. We went through the analysis, we hired enumerators to collect the data from the field, and questionnaire were translated in Kinyarwanda to make sure that we are collecting the accurate responses from the respondent.
Yes, it's been 4 years since Access to Finance Rwanda started collecting this data. And as you know, or as you may have heard, that data is the new oil. Information is power. It's because of this data that we are able to make decisions. And in this room today, we have policymakers. The permanent secretary for the Ministry of Youth and Culture in Rwanda is here with us today. And he's going to answer some not easy questions regarding what kind of policies are being put in place to ensure that more young people are included financially, but just not to be included, because it's one thing to be included financially, but it's another thing to be included when that financially with a purpose. Right, when young people are saving with a purpose. And just to take us a little bit back to our history, in 2015, the then Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Minister Clever Gatete, started the Savings Week. The Savings Week was started. And when the Savings Week was started, it was started with the aim to ensure that more people save. Now, our country, Rwanda, has one of the lowest numbers of people saving on the continent, and that doesn't create sustainability. It doesn't create reinvestment. And in the long run, that doesn't create generational wealth, but also uplifting people out of poverty. But with that, we have organizations like the MasterCard Foundation that are helping young people understand these things better. And who better than the head of the MasterCard Foundation, the country head, Mrs. Rika Rigamba, to also help us dissect and break down some of the methodologies, based off the findings that we have today that could help us not only bridge that gap, but also leapfrog and move at a faster rate to ensure that more people out there are included financially. So tomorrow, the conversation will be how do we get more women in? The other day, it could be how do men also, are saving better and saving larger sums of whatever they are earning, so that we're not just spend all society or culture. Please forgive my monologue, there, but my colleague, Mr. Ephraim Rutagarama, is back. He's going to be taking us furthermore into this breakdown of this survey, how it was covered, what methodology was used, and the likes. So without any further ado, allow me to give the floor back to Mr. Ephraim Rutagarama.
Okay, thank you so much. I was describing the methodology. This survey is targeting the Rwandan residents above 16, from 16 and above years old. It takes one member of the household to see the level of financial inclusion. So that one, it helps us to analyze the progress and the intervention made to see the progress. So without spending much time on the methodology we used, we analyzed, and this report is highlighting the level of youth, how are financially included. So identify and analyze overall level of financial inclusion, of course looking at the challenges, the barriers, as I highlighted before in the previous slides. This is the profile of youth in Rwanda. We found that around 17% have formal employment. During the analysis, we found that employment is a key driver of financial inclusion. Of course, education is a fundamental baseline to take that drive financial inclusion. Age also is a good indicator to see how different categories of youth of Rwandans are included. Gender, where we found that 56% are female and male are 44%, and 73% reside in rural, and 26 reside in urban. When you look the employment, business ownership is relatively small among the youth than the rest of the population, where business ownership, 37% of youth are 34% compared to 45% are owning business. And full-time job, when you look, youth are 18% and the rest of population is 20%. And when you look the part-time job, youth are many with 21%, and students 9% compared to the rest of population, which is 0.1. Unemployed, youth are more unemployed compared to the rest of the population. When we look at the source of livelihood, youth rely on similar source of their parents or the rest of the population. Money from farming, 38%, they got money from farming activities compared to 31% of the rest of the population. When I say the rest of population, it's above 30. By above 30, from 31 and above. Peers of work, the youth are less in peers of work, where it's 22% compared to 28%. Salary and wages, youth are less compared to the rest of population, where we found that 12% versus 15% of the rest of population. When you look the self-employed, youth are many, because when you look at the demography, this is the factors of demography of Rwanda, where youth are many compared to the rest of the population. Salary and wages, public youth have 9% versus the rest of the population, which is 7%. Get money from household members. Of course, household youth are less likely to have a household. That is why we have 2% versus the rest of the population, which is 6%. 75%, when we look the income category, by the definition of Rwanda National Statistics Office, we look at the income category to see 75% of youth were in the first three quintile in 2016, but the figure has declined to 62%. So in terms of poverty analysis, the first quintile are in a worse situation, up to 30 quintile. But when you compare the wealth of 4 quintile and the fifth, are better off compared to the rest of the quintiles. where in the first quintile you have 19% versus the rest of population, which is 14% in the first quintile. When you look at the level of income, it's below 7,000 monthly, which is 84,000 on an annual basis. And when you look in the second quintile, youth are many, where there's 18% versus 16%. On third quintile, youth are many, where we have 25% to versus 22% in the third quintile. And 10, when you reach in the better, what I can call where the people are better off, youth in the fourth quintile are many, 10% compared to the rest of population of 9%, and the difference is too small. But in the fifth quintile, you see a big gap, where youth are 27% versus 39%. And this is also highlighted by the level of employment, because the adults are more likely to have a job compared to youth. Drivers of financial inclusion, overall youth financial inclusion, today we are seeing 88% of youth are financially included, which means that 12% are financially excluded. 12% of that population is a big number compared to the rest of the population, where 5% are only excluded, and inclusion for the rest of the population is 95%, which is a big number compared to the 88%. When we look at the different categories of age, where 75% of people between 16 and 20 are financially included, and 25% of them are excluded, financially excluded. When you look at the range of 21 to 25, the increase of inclusion is there, where we have 93%, and 7 of them are financially excluded. Drivers of when we look by the financial inclusion by education, we are seeing that people with higher education are more likely to be included. When you look at the tertiary education, where 97% are included and 3% of them are excluded. And when you compare the results with 2016, we see a slight decline, where 99% in the tertiary education were included and 1% were excluded. When you look at the financial inclusion by employment, 93% own a business are financially included, and 7 of them are financially excluded. Full-time job, 93% are financially included, and 7 of them are financially excluded. The part-time, 91% are financially included, and 9% are financially excluded. In the students, 92% of them are financially included, and 28% of youth are financially excluded. And this is where we have a big number. And when we look at unemployed people, 73% of them are financially included, and 27% are excluded. When we look at financial inclusion by income category, where in the first quintile, we see 89% are included and 11% are excluded. In the second quintile, 92% are included and 8 of them are excluded. In the third quintile, we see 97% of youth are financially included and 3 of them are excluded. But when you look at the fourth and fifth quintile, the inclusion is 100%, which is showing that the employment has a big role in terms of financial inclusion. When we define financial inclusion, we look at people between 16 and above. And of course, to deep dive the analysis, the inclusion, financial inclusion, combine both formal and informal. And those people who are financially included are those who have or use financial products or services in formal or informal services. And financially excluded do not have or use any financial product or services, either formal or informal. And we look at the formally served or informally served to see who is formally served and who is informally served. Informal served group banks and MFIs, those who serve through, for example, using banks, who have banks account, who borrow from the bank, and also group the MFIs, those microfinance institutions. When we look at the access trend to see how the level, looking at the formally served, informally served, or banked, we see that youth, 38% of them are formally served. And when you look at the total between the formally served is 74% compared to the 2016, which was 76%. And informally served, a lesser proportion of youth, 68%, which is 1,046,000, 436,000 and 33, sorry, 1,436,000 and 339 compared to 1,475,000 and 703 in 2016, which is in terms of percentage, it's 2%. There is a decline in informal. There is a shift from informal served to formal served. And when we look the banked, 31% are banked versus 24% in 2016. This is really showing a good trend, and there is a shift. This increase, it's because there is a shift of people from informal to formal services. So when we look the segmentation into youth versus the rest of population, 31% are banked, which is less compared to 38% of the rest of population. And as I said, the rest of population is above 30 years old. When we look at a dimension of borrowing, how youth have access to credit, borrowing and credit, approximately 66% of youth borrowed money in the past 12 months during the Finscope survey. So this shows us an increase of how youth are improving in terms of access to credit. And only 16% of youth borrow from formal financial institutions. This means that youth are excluded from formal credit market. When you look at the dimension of saving and investment, of course, saving drives investment. Around 50% of youth save with formal financial services providers, where 55% save using informal mechanisms such as saving groups, VSLA, Tontine, and Ikimina, what in the village they used to call Ikimina, the group savings. And most of savings are for non-developmental purpose. The creation of appropriate product is likely to help shifting saving towards development purpose. And you will see this in part of the recommendation, because most of the youth, they save for non-developmental purpose. For example, when I say developmental purpose, if I save money for education, that is for developmental purpose. But if I save for consumption, in a leisure, in other things, that is non-developmental purpose saving. When we are analyzing Finscope, you look at also bank and mobile account usage. Mobile money presents an opportunity to expand financial inclusion among people that are excluded from the market. And we are seeing different interventions are being made by government and partners to increase the number of mobile ownership. So when you look the own bank account, youth are 18% and the rest of the population is 24%. And the 82% are only active, because to have account and using it, it's also different. You may have access, but the use is also important. 82% of youth have active account, and 18% are dormant, and that is related to mobile account use, bank account usage. Mobile money account ownership and usage. Mobile money account, 63% of youth have mobile money account, and the active, it's 43%, versus the rest, which is 57%. And dormant, youth has less compared to the rest of population. Only 48% has dormant mobile money account. When we look at the risk mitigation and the uptake of insurance, only 12% are able to copy the insurance mechanism. This excludes mutuelle de santé. That is why we have only 12% of youth have access to insurance products from formal financial institutions, up from 7% in 2016. You see there is a growth of 5%. So when you look at the uptake of insurance, total adult population, Finscope shows that 17% of Rwandans are able to have insurance products from the formal financial services, and 18% are excluded, 83% are excluded. When you look at the youth, it's 12%, and 80% of youth are insurance product excluded. And when you look at the rest of the population, are more likely to copy the mechanism of insurance and risk mitigation. Only 19% are insured and 81% are excluded. And we see this as a long journey. There is a need of intervention to support this particular part of the insurance, and the insurance is part of the financial inclusion. So this is the part of recommendation. We look at the data and we come up with different recommendations targeting that can support youth to be included. And we increase access to post-secondary education is critical in building a knowledge-based economy. And this will help to include more youth in financial services uptake. Supporting youth business owners to avoid premature death of businesses. When we look at the rate of survival of the business owned by youth are more likely to death at a premature stage. That is why there is a need of helping youth to maintain the business to survive for a long time. A catchment program that upskill the youth after completing their education. This will facilitate a transaction from education to employment. This is really critical. The employment is a main driver for financial inclusion because it's where you get more income, you'll be able to take a loan, to invest. So employment is really critical. If there is a program that helps youth from education to employment, it will help youth to be more included. Introducing affordable credit products is likely to increase usage of credit for youth. Youth financial inclusion strategy should focus on people in rural areas and those in lower income quantities. This recommendation, we looked at the difference between inclusion in urban and inclusion in rural. We see that people in rural are more likely to be excluded. And there is a need of intervention targeting people in rural and also in lower income category. Leveraging technology to provide financial services and introduce new products, affordable products. Since you are slightly more to own the business in the agriculture, where 21%, 22%, 21% youth versus 20.9% of the rest are in agriculture. And there is a need to support youth in agriculture to be more included, helping them to have access to input and increase productivity. The increase of productivity will help them to be included, to open an account in a formal bank or in a formal financial institution. That will increase the number of youth to be financially included. Thank you so much, and I will come to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ephraim. Technology doesn't seem to be, a very good friend to all of us. But that was quite an interesting breakdown of what is going to lead our conversation today. I had my entrepreneurial hat on there a little bit, and I saw just a very interesting stat you put out of saying, 18% on 18% of the youth are still unbanked. And I was thinking, do we even have a youth bank as yet? Because that's something that we've seen successful, especially in Asia. A bank that caters for young people to create products for young people, and I think that's something that our brother here, Mr. Regis Umugiraneza, could be able to break down for us, being that we have an agriculture bank, or we've seen successful agricultural banks. Now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Regis Umugiraneza. He's the vice chair of the Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs at the Private Sector Federation and member of the Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum. Now, he's going to tackle the opportunities and challenges for youth financial inclusion in Rwanda. And just not to forget, ladies and gentlemen that have joined us, please feel free to send in your questions, your remarks. You can tweet us, access to Finance Rwanda on Twitter, or even on Instagram. You can put your remarks there. You can also post them just below. If you see your dashboards, below your dashboards, there's an opportunity for Q&A. Write your questions there, and we'll be willing to share them with any of our speakers and panelists later on. The floor is yours, Mr. Regis Umugiraneza.
Thousands of small companies operating here in Rwanda are operating at micro and small level, and most of them owned by small and young people. But government of Rwanda has put in place a different program, business creation like Youth Connect and so many more initiatives. These attracted many young people to create a different potential business or rootstones that are impacting our economic development, such as agriculture, tourism, ICT, and so many sectors that are impacting our economy. This is an opportunity not only for financial sector, but also for young people, because within all those sectors, there are different opportunities for job creation for young people. Of course, we are doing this as young people, doing business, but we are having a problem with the financial sector, especially banks. And as we are doing business now, as young people, we are planning or heading to become the partners and the future business leaders, as well as potential partners of those banks. However, there is a need of a strong inclusive support mechanism for young people toward their success. Rwanda has a vision of becoming knowledge-based economy, and youth are at the center of this transformation. This means we do business in different ways from traditional ways. In the past, our parents were doing business just, going to China and buy something and come back and sell here in Rwanda. But nowadays, because of this transformation, we are having energy, skills, knowledge to bring new things with the innovative solutions that can impacting our economy. So, but when you see how our financial sector is supporting our youth, it's really worse. Why? Because when we are bringing those innovations, sometimes those innovations are confusing the banks. So I don't know why. Maybe it's because they don't have skills or they are not very aware about the process of these kind of innovation things. But there's a big problem of things supporting those innovations. Especially, I think there's a lack of understanding the process of business creations, from ideation, prototyping, launching, the value of death, where this part is most critical area. Most of their businesses fail because of this part. Like they are trying to, most of them start with the ideas. And then when it comes to the prototype, they face with a lot of challenges. We don't have incubation centers. And the incubation centers, that's where most of the youth should or might go through to prototype their ideas. Governments did well with ICT, where we have Kela, we have Fabra, we have those kind of facilitation where young people who have ideas in ICT can go and try their product. But when it comes to some of the sector like agriculture and food system, it's another issue. Myself, I tried to have this bread I'm making now for sweet potato. It took me 5 years just to get the bread which can compete on the market. I was struggling a lot just to make a product. Of course, I spent a lot of money, energy, skills to get that product. So there's the need of having incubation centers so that young people should make the product, because a key product is a key to success of those people who are doing business. If they don't have products, no one will support them. So due to that, people who are in the financial sectors, who does not understand all those process of making the business, they don't trust the young people. They always feel like maybe young people, they will get money and then go away. They always think that when the young people get money, they will just go to schools, and then they don't really trust them. Even though some young people are creating those potential businesses, trusting the businesses instead of looking at the person as the owner or as a entrepreneur. I remember, it's just currently, I asked a loan from one of the microfinance here, very recently. It took me 8 months to get at least the response from them in, of course, time. But also, they rejected my request. They approved the loan, but they asked me to have fixed assets, the collateral. And the collateral is not available for young people. I was having equipment. I just gave them the equipment, but they didn't accept it. And that microfinance is branded as a microfinance which is supporting the youth. And I was very shocked to see why they are branding themselves as microfinance, which is supporting young people, but they are really not do what they're supposed to do to support young people. So due to that, that's why we are here, to raise our voice. We need financial inclusion for young people from not only the banks, but also even the partners to come together to understand what we are doing, to believe in us, but also to invest in our future. Don't see young people as someone who cannot make the business happen. See the business potentiality. In that case, you will be free and having confidence of your money to get back to your bank. And hopefully these reports will help the bank, the financial sector, to understand all the process of how we create a business as young people, but also to understand all those innovations we are bringing on the table. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Praise yours.
Thank you, Regis. A few internet glitches, but what I took from Regis's conversation is he's surprised by some of these financial institutions that are branding themselves as offering services or catering to the young people. And it's these young people that today we want to get banked. We want them to have purposeful savings. We want to bridge that gap of 12% that are not yet financially included, but we also want them to be included with a purpose. And I think for more answers on this, who better to ask than a panel of experts that have not only dealt with young people, but also are dealing in creating policies that are going to ensure that the future is more secure, to ensure that young people create this discipline, create these habits that are going to help us not only leapfrog, but uplift more Rwandans out of poverty. That was Mr. Regis Umjiraneza. He's the Vice Chair of Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs at the Private Sector Federation and member of the Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum. Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Regis Umjiraneza. Now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists, and I would like to ask them to please open their cameras as we introduce each of them. Now, our focus for this panel is going to be youth financial inclusion in Rwanda. Yes, you heard me right, youth financial inclusion in Rwanda. And just a reminder to our participants out there that if you want to be part of this conversation, you can tweet us, Access to Finance Rwanda. You can send us a DM, Instagram, any of these social media platforms. Facebook, Access to Finance Rwanda is where you will find us. You'll see us with a bright green logo with some yellow and blue in them. And this is again the first of our LEAD series, LEAD standing for Learn, Engage, Act and Develop. Now, to introduce our panelists for today, allow me to start with the Permanent Secretary at the Minister of Youth and Culture, Mr. Emmanuel Bijenimana. Thank you for making the time, sir, and thank you for joining us. I would also like to introduce the country head, MasterCard Foundation, Mrs. Rika Rigamba. And last but not least, Mrs. Caritas Kairisa. She is the National Project Coordinator for the Integrated Country Approach, which is FAO-ICA. Yes, thank you for making FAO standing for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. There, thank you for making the time as well, Mrs. Caritas Kairisa. Thank you, our panelists. If I may ask Mr. Emmanuel Bijenimana to open his camera, and then we can kickstart our conversation.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for making the time. You opened your camera last, so I will start with you there, Mr. Bijenimana. It's I wouldn't call it an appalling situation because 88% is on the bright side of things, honestly. And here I'm looking at the glasses half full. I'm trying to be the optimist. Usually I'm the pessimist because of my other titles there. But 88% for the youth financially included. If I'm to compare to the 95% for the rest of the country, there's still about a 6% difference there. So there are things that we need to address. And you at the ministry should be the right people to give us the answers to this. So what are the plans to include, to bridge that gap first to 6%, then to the 12% that is remaining of young people, to include them financially? What are the plans, sir?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss this important and exciting topic, which is access to finance. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth and Culture, I would like to thank all actors in access to finance, and especially thank access to Finance Rwanda for the role they play measuring our progress by not leaving one behind, of course. If it comes to empowering the Rwandan access to finance, there is an important task to overtake, and we have noted and understood our tasks by analyzing even the findings from this survey. We have noted that 12% of youth need to be financially included. It is not an easy task, but we believe that with our inclusive policies, strategies, we will make it. We have also noted that the report highlights 26% of youth needing to be formally served. It is another task. The majority of the youth are excluded from the formal credit market, we noted. And these push them to rely on informal credit markets, which can expose them to exploitation by informal lenders, named like here in Kigali, the Lambert banks that charges high interest rates and use aggressive techniques when recovering their loans. These may cause the permanent fear of using the loan in the future, the psychological issues. You wanted me to discuss about this gap. And it is, of course, widely recognized that the development pathway requires access to appropriate financial products, including savings, credit, insurance, and investment instruments. Although much of the debate around poverty reduction focuses on meeting basic needs, such as food and health care, sustained long-term economic progress at both household and country level depends on access to financial products and services that allow individuals and companies to implement their plans. Private and public sector here in Rwanda, efforts to address these needs have been on the run for the last years. The government of Rwanda, for example, has initiated various policies and strategies to support youth empowerment. Financial inclusion for youth is reflected in both national strategy for transformation and the skills development and employment promotion strategy. For the implementation of these policies, the Ministry of Youth and Culture, in collaboration with other partners, implements various programs to promote the financial inclusion for youth. Let me go through some examples, for example. So we are working on promoting the saving culture. Here I mean raising or instilling the culture of saving among the youth. So we do use formal and conventional and unconventional strategies, going through the formal education from primary, secondary, university levels, using informal means such as the cooperative of young people, the informal groupings like women and so on. We do mainstream the financial literacy. For example, in every youth-related program, such as the program that you have called Eco Brigade, that is promoting environment, we make sure that every beneficiary receives the financial literacy, goes through the financial literacy program, and once successful, we do award or recognize the efforts. We go through intense mobilization in the community, in schools and other platforms to mobilize our youth to benefit from available financial services. If not making advocacy for youth-friendly services, we also do market the available product for our youth. We do work to improve the quality of services provided by business development advisors so that we address some of the issues as raised by Regis, the first speaker. And we have these advisors deployed at every sector to support mostly youth and women to design the viable project, the bankable project that could be supported by financial institutions. We have so many interventions at policy strategy levels, but also if it comes to working with our partners in the sector, we have developed a sound partnership, and we do promise that we will keep this partnership if it comes to access to finance. We thank you, and we do expect your advice. We do expect more questions to maybe understand our policies and strategies, and we remain available for any engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary PS, Mr. Emmanuel Bijanimana, and thank you for those quite extensive introductory remarks and answer and promises regarding the policy there. But I'll be coming to you. I'll be coming back to you a little bit later on. For now, I want to bring Mrs. Rika Rigamba into the conversation. And Mrs. Rika, you've seen that presentation that FM has given us earlier, the Finscope 2020. It presenting the differences, especially when it comes to the uptake or usage of these financial products among the young people. Now, I want to bring in your expertise as someone who's running an organization and want to know what role that particular organization, here speaking of the MasterCard Foundation, has considered and why it's important for the MasterCard Foundation to ensure that there's financial inclusion of young people in its work in Rwanda.
Thank you, Ronald, and thank you, AFR, for this great report that just came out. Maybe just to give some context about the foundation. The MasterCard Foundation, as you mentioned, is philanthropy that has an office here in Rwanda, and our mission is really around advancing education and financial inclusion to catalyze prosperity in the developing countries. And we work almost exclusively in Africa. We have recently, in 2018, launched our Young Africa Work Strategy with a goal and ambition that our work will enable 30 million young people, especially women, to have dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. And this is quite an ambition, but one that we feel really starts with financial inclusion, education, as I said. And we see a clear link with the work that we're doing of creating employment opportunities for young people. And maybe just to give it a bit of a flavor with an example, I think I did see in the chat, and to be able to share and put a face to some of the work we've done and how we've seen financial inclusion playing an important role. I'll give a story of one of the beneficiaries of a program called Florence. And Florence is a young woman entrepreneur. In Rwanda here, we have one of our program is in the tourism and hospitality sector, known as Hanga Hazaza. That's the name of the initiative. And this young woman went through different, programs. We work with various partners who work in the skilling space, in the employment matching space, as well as in the business development service and financial inclusion or access to finance, as we would have it. And this young entrepreneur is renting a space, right, as an Airbnb space. And through the different programs, she was able to almost use it as a different menu, has gone through a BDS support. And here I want to say that it's, when we think about financial inclusion, it's not just about the funding and all the stats have shown. I think it's exciting to hear that 30% of young people already are in entrepreneurship and which is really something to tap into. But we've also heard that they don't necessarily transact. And so being financially inclusive, in our view, is not a standalone. You have to be able to accompany, and business development service enables you to do that. And so to go back to Florence, to try and understand her journey, she went through the business development service provision, and more recently, she, with COVID, obviously, which is something that we're living with, was really affected, with the lockdown. And we know that the sector, the tourism hospitality sector, has been one of the most affected. And we were able, as the foundation, to set up a program, which we call the COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Program, which enabled businesses that could, to be able to survive, and there was a grant component to it, but as well as a business development service. Because one thing that is also critical is that as the pandemic and such crises arrive, the way we do run our businesses, the way we handle issues to do with cash flow has to be adapted, and so very unfortunate, of course, she was really, really affected. And what she did tell me recently was that she was, going through some of the business development service provision that we have. Sometimes it ends up with some grant. Sometimes you don't have access to the grant. And one of our programs, we do have an incubator, which after the 6 months, some of them do receive grants, and she wasn't one of them. So she went through the incubator, got a lot of great, insights, managed her business, cut down on some of the costs, but wasn't among the first 5 that did it. And she was telling me that many other entrepreneurs got discouraged, but she didn't. And so when the Recovery and Resilience Program came on board, she applied for that. And this time she did get the funding, and it allowed her to reinvest in her business. She changed the location, because she's renting out. And so she found a cheaper location. Again, being able to look at how much money do I actually have? How do I cut down on some of my costs? But how do I make sure that I still am able to invest in the new place? And she went to the new place, and in this new place, she was able to obviously, cut down on her cost, reinvest in this, and recently, she actually told us that she was among the few businesses or the hotels that have been allowed by RDB, the regulator, to be one of the businesses where clients and different tourists, travelers coming to Rwanda can be quarantined. And so the reason I'm giving this story is to try and really try to put ourselves in the shoes of the entrepreneur, of what is their daily. What are the daily struggles, and how do we adapt programs to be able to answer that? So absolutely financial inclusion, but for what? The ability to have had business development services, the ability to have provided an opportunity for them to look inside, understand what are their cost factors, and also the entrepreneur's ability to be resilient, not to be discouraged, to keep pushing. If one program doesn't give you what you want, what about the next one? And then how are you using all the knowledge and applying it? And how does that contribute to the growth of the business, or in this case, at least to make sure it survives. And I think some of the data that we've seen in this report really helps us to see, indicators of the, how many young people are financially included, but what's happening to that inclusion. I think we'll have an opportunity maybe, throughout this discussion to speak a bit more about what this journey has been and how digital continues to play an importance. But I just wanted to be able to, maybe set that context to explain that financial inclusion is not just about being in a bank. It's not just about having an account, with Momo. All these are great opportunities. But then what more? How do we use that financial inclusion of young people to be able to grow and to contribute to a better life for these young people that we'd like to serve?
Thank you, Rika. A very extensive answer. We seem to have lost Caritas for a bit. She seems to have had, an ESCOM situation. I wouldn't call it a Rwanda Energy Group situation because power cuts are a rarity here. But as soon as she joins us, we'll be throwing to her. And just before she joins us, there's been an interesting comment there that has been raised by Peace Masozera Uwase from the Central Bank. She says, Regis raised some crucial points about access to credit by youth entrepreneurs. However, we need to recognize that commercial bank lending is not the most ideal source of funding for startups anyway. Now, the solution lies in alternative sources of financing like venture capital funds, and this has been a major gap in Rwanda. That said, the recent adoption of the partnership law in Rwanda sets the stage for the establishment of VCs here and therefore opens up the space for a wider variety of sources of funding. And I think that takes me to my next question as we wait for Caritas to join us. And I want to bring the Permanent Secretary back into this. PS, Mr. Emmanuel Janimana, quickly, those alternative sources of financing, how we can bridge these gaps, how best can we bridge these gaps?
Thank you very much for the question, and it is very interesting, especially with this context of COVID-19. The formal way of access to finance, of course, are very critical if it comes to funding the businesses. But of course, we do understand that they cannot satisfy all of our needs. So the young people, they are the large clients for the future, but also they are the potential clients today. The formal banks, the financial institutions have introduced the youth-friendly product at a good step. We are actually satisfied by the level of the interventions, but we still keep our advocacy so that we ensure everyone is served, is satisfied, is getting the support to implement the business, the idea. However, of course, the financial capacity and other factors cannot allow every young people with innovation to access this formal market. We do confirm that we need the informal ways of accessing to the finance. Here we can include the groups, the way, and actually these models are developed among our youth, the groups, commonly known as Ibimina. So starting from there, we do train them. They become cooperatives. They learn, they get the financial literacy. They develop that culture of of saving, but also they go through different steps to become entrepreneurs. We have also noted that the direct support to our innovators, such as the initiatives around the different projects with our partners, like the Youth Connect Award, the TVET Youth Challenge. I was interested when Legis was discussing this issue, because he's one of our beneficiaries and leading by example. So we do understand that the other informal ways of supporting the innovations, of supporting our young people with this business mind can play a critical role if it comes to access to finance. And here at the ministry, we have tried, we have proved the concept, and we do support it, of course, with what would I say? We've of course a moderate way of using the approach, because it can somehow create a dependence culture if not well managed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, there, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Youth and Culture, Mr. Emmanuel Bijanimana. Madam Caritas seems to have rejoined us. It's glad to have you back, Caritas. And I think it's only fair that we introduce what FAO does, but also essentially, I hope you can touch on what the Food and Agriculture Organization for the UN is doing in boosting decent jobs for youth, specifically in the agri-food value chain system.
Thank you very much, Arnold. Thank you, participants, and I'm really happy to share with you what FAO is contributing in this regard. Allow me to underline that agribusiness, it is actually offering the best opportunities of self-employment and job creation in Africa. And given the huge agricultural potential of the continent, this is something that youth might actually get benefit from. And I think this potential will even be amplified by the Africa Free Trade Continental Area, which is also another opportunity. So it is really the right time for youth to engage more in agribusiness. So coming back to what FAO is doing, so I would say that on the policy level, FAO is technically, together with the Ministry of Agriculture, elaborating a national youth employment strategy and in agri-food system. So we really think a technical working group on youth employment that comprises of youth themselves, public and private stakeholders, that will continue to even drive the implementation of this strategy that is under elaboration, will be something that will add value to what we are doing in this regard. So FAO is also supporting youth organizations such as REAF and other youth forums to strategically be involved in the process of youth employment. FAO started in partnership with other stakeholders to build the capacity of youth in financial literacy. I'm lucky that Ross is around. I saw him in participants, so he also contributed as a consultant, and I think it shaped our mind on what we can do better to engage youth in this regard. So we also organize sessions with financial institutions. I've seen also some members who participated in those sessions to actually interact with youth, to learn their strengths and challenges, to be able to design convenient products. This was highlighted by Regis in his speech, saying that actually financial institutions are yet to understand the nature of agribusiness, and they don't have this picture of innovation in this area, and that is a barrier to access to finance for the youth involved in agribusiness. So we really think that, as the PS mentioned, a synergy of efforts is something that will give a rapid impact if we all work together towards this noble cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caritas. And just to reiterate something to our participants, that feel free to ask questions, Kinyarwanda, French, any of those languages that you're most comfortable in. Just use the Zoom options below there in the Q&A. Type in your question. We have a few questions coming in. Emmanuel, I've seen your question. Will be coming to those two questions and throwing them to the panelists a little bit later on. Mrs. Rika, I wanted to bring you back into the conversation. And this time it's, again, back to this report emphasizing the need for youth to be given the opportunity to develop skills necessary to participate in economic activities and pursue entrepreneurial ambitions. Now, Ms. Caritas has hinted on things like the AFCFTA, and the need for these skill sets to tap into things like the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Now, what skills in particular do you believe are essential for young entrepreneurs to tap into the creations like the AFCFTA?
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Caritas. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, please go on, Rika.
All right. No, thank you. Maybe I'll really build on what Caritas explained. I mean, she did talk about the financial literacy, which is definitely something that is important. I think maybe what I'll speak to in terms of how we approach opportunities like the AFCTA or access to, especially in the area of access to market, if I take that as an example. And sorry, there's a bit of an echo, Arnold, so maybe if you go on mute. It's just, thank you. And so, yes, so when we look at the access to markets, what the AFCTA provides for is the ability for Rwandan entrepreneurs and other African entrepreneurs to tap into the wider market that AFCTA provides. I would look at it in two ways. I think there's an element of how we empower the young entrepreneurs, but also how we enable them. And so when it comes to empowering, I think it speaks to the skill set. We have talked about, touched upon it certainly, and the report does talk about it around the importance of digital, into the space, especially with what we've seen into the pandemic. But the report also shows that young people, in comparison to the older adult population, are really the ones that are taking up a lot of the digital solutions that are in the market. And so, but not everyone. So I think there's an element of how do we increase the number of young people who are digitally literate, and I think that's an important component and something that, as the foundation, we are looking into as we go into expanding our portfolio in Rwanda as part of the Young Africa Work Strategy. And digital is really becoming at the core of the work that we do. In fact, we do have an ongoing initiative with AFR, e-Huzo program, that looks at digitizing 1,500 small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises. And this speaks to the importance of what the digital and e-commerce specifically is increasing. And so our ability to provide the right skills, to have more eye workers, into this space is one of the important skills. But there's also the element of enabling. And here, what we mean by enabling is things around access to information, access to markets, and access to finance. Access to information, and I think it was Jean Bosco Yachu in his introductory remarks who talked a little bit about the SME clinic, which is something that the FR started, which is very commendable in trying to understand, how the SMEs are doing. But I would push it to also understand, where are the opportunities, what can Rwanda sell to, a neighboring country or another country in Africa. So information is critical. And then this element of access to markets. Access to market means, things around standards, what standards are needed for which market, and working with the Rwanda Bureau of Standard and other stakeholders and the foundation as well, in terms of how do we prepare our young people to have their products, the innovative products that they are building, to actually meet standards for them to be able to sell to different markets. And finally, the access to finance, because ultimately all this costs money. And I think we have been talking about the different challenges, and Regis give us vivid examples of waiting for 8 months and to be rejected for that matter, but also just the mere fact of understanding what the young people really need, what type of products, the realities of not, for example, having collateral, and I think if we are able to unlock the different barriers, this will be able to help the young entrepreneurs to be empowered with the right skills, but also to be enabled for them to be able to access the opportunities and the markets that the Africa Free Trade Agreement is creating.
Thank you, Rika. Apologies earlier. It seems like I wasn't keeping my own house rules. But we can see your comments there. People asking about the report being shared. Again, Access to Finance Rwanda on Twitter. The report, a link to the report will be shared there a little bit later on. Mrs. Caritas, I just want to bring you back into the conversation, and this is largely because Rika has talked about the need to boost skills in the. You as a person working in the agriculture sector, you're dealing largely with many of the people that are seen to be in the rural areas of the country. And in a way, and according to this Finscope research, those are the people largely in the lower income quintile. Now, what practical solutions there do you think should be embraced for this?
Thank you, Arnold. I think some of the solutions have been already pointed out, but I would mention what, as FAO, we see that should also be tackled. The first one is to mobilize youth for business formalization. I think I saw in the presentation that a good number of youth actually are being mobilized or are feeling motivated to start their own businesses. I hope next time maybe this study will show us like how much, in terms of percentage, how much businesses are actually formalized. So this is also a challenge that we think, if resolved, will lead to more financial inclusion for youth. I'm talking this from experience of youth who actually informally conduct their businesses, and when it comes to requesting loans from banks, they think that it will be automatic, and they don't have this financial background, financial relationship with their financial institutions. So business formalization is a hindrance to most of the youth in terms of access to finance, because the bank also need to understand and to qualify the youth as actually reliable clients. So this is one of the challenge that we think should be addressed with our combined efforts. And the other thing is that there is also another room for stakeholders, including private sector, to actually upgrade their way of working to contribute actively in youth empowerment from the rural settings. For instance, hotels and restaurants could organize something like, contracts with youth to supply quality agri-food products, and these contracts may be used as guarantees in financial institutions to access working capital. You remember Regis pointed out something like, the limited capacity to collateral. So I think if we think about also upgrading the way of working in terms of involving more the private sector to design, the way of working that actually facilitate youth to come into businesses and have access to finance, like these contracts that I was mentioning. It is something that can also add value to what we are doing. I think, I do understand that the financial institutions are doing businesses. It is very important for the youth to understand that actually they need to meet the criteria to be considered as reliable clients. So it's not possible to keep on mentioning that financial institutions have to lower interest rates, to be favorable to youth in our businesses, but also the youth should have this mindset that they are dealing actually with business people, they are business institutions, and they want to benefit from the loans they are giving out. So it is the role of our youth also to understand that and endeavor to meet the criteria. But additionally, however, these financial institutions should also increase tailored financial products for rural youth involved in agribusiness. For instance, they would increase the products that target groups or cooperatives with reduced interest rates, yes, but also sufficient grace periods, because agriculture is a sector that is more or less complicated when it comes to the process, when it comes to different stages, as Regis mentioned before. It needs more understanding and more tailored financial products to make sure that, for instance, if you are involved in potato and you are getting a loan, they don't start expecting the payback to be next month, for instance. So it is something also that could be practical when it comes to increase the financial literacy, the financial access for youth, especially in rural areas. So I would really stress the issue of business formalization. I think youth have that challenge to make sure that whatever they do in agribusiness is actually formal, that their business is registered, that, for instance, they have an account number of their business, and they deal with the banks, they build their historic background so that if they need a loan from a bank, it is easy. The bank knows the youth person as a very reliable client, considering the movements on his account or her account. So it is something that I really find very useful and something that we should work on to achieve more more results, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Caritas, for that very detailed answer. My next question there is going to go out to the Permanent Secretary. And Mrs. Rika, please feel free to piggyback off the Permanent Secretary's answer to this. And I want us to, we've been talking, it feels like we're running, but let's walk for a minute. And this is because we are in the midst of a pandemic. Now, the pandemic has had its effects on the economy. Young people are some of those who are the most financially vulnerable. Now, how can we ensure that the savings culture that majority have picked up, and by majority talking about the 88% that are included, is not diminished by the effects of the pandemic? In other words, we've taken 5 steps forward. How do we ensure that we don't take 7, 8 steps back? Permanent Secretary.
Thank you very much. Let me start by confirming a statement from one economist who used to say that growing a business from the first seed is not a smooth journey and is not as simple as going from Kigali to Gisenyi to enjoy the Lake Kivu sun. So gutangiza business n'ubundi buri gihe ntabwo ari ibintu byoroshye. It is always complicated, and even from the first expectation, you have to understand that the way is not really linear. All of us were affected by the pandemic of COVID-19, and of course, the business as usual couldn't be saved. Specifically, the young people businesses were heavily affected, and the government of Rwanda tried to curb down the effect of COVID on businesses by putting in place an economic recovery fund. In line with this, my culture also has financially supported the promising projects. We actually went up to 150 plus projects with around 500 million, and there is still a lot to be done. So we need to make sure that this pandemic don't cut the progress. And my culture, in partnership with other partners, will continue to support youth to raise their earnings through the labor-intensive approach or projects such as we here, for example, have the road maintenance programs across all districts of the country. We have the Eco Brigade. We are used to make reference to it. We have the job creation in agriculture, as was discussed. This is an important sector we need to focus on as we go, because we understand that many youth live in the rural areas. As you mentioned, the role of youth is also to be considered, especially during this pandemic. We need innovation. We need the project that can convince our bankers. Of course, there is a pandemic. There is a need to bring on board everyone, but also the bankers need to make the money. They need to make the interest. How do we mitigate? How do we consider the reality from each side? We somehow need ethics when it comes to dealing with the bankers' money. So we need to train our youth. Our young people need to understand how to deal with the loans, how to invest with the loans, how to innovate so that we cut the issues around our businesses. And from the example of Regis, the first speaker, we have noted some of the challenges, either before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and even for the future. Some of the challenges the youth are facing vis-a-vis this important and strategic topic of access to finance are like that culture of innovation, the limited access to collaterals, the policies and regulation around this issue, the support instrument, such as the interventions of our business development funds that are somehow criticized or limited if it comes to the accessibility, especially for our young people. In summary, at policy level, we will need to make and promote competitions. Of course, the financial institutions are doing well, but they should understand that the large clients, here I mean the large companies, most of them, they have received the loans, they have been served, and the pending and the remaining potential clients for now and for the future are the youth. To develop them for our business in the future, we need a clear partnership, we need a clear collaboration so that we make the tailored product for them, to grow them so that they become the large clients, the large companies for the near future. And bearing in mind that, of course, this pandemic is an obstacle, is an issue to deal with, but cannot stop us. And thank you very much for the question.
If I may come in, Arnold, you asked if could piggyback on what Honorable P.S. said. I think I absolutely agree with the points, and maybe I'll just add three things. I think as we go through as we walk and as we go through the pandemic, I think one of the things we can do of the three things is one, data. How are we using data? How are we learning? I think this report is one important tool that we have that is showing us what the situation is, what the realities of the young people are, and also make some recommendations. And throughout this pandemic that we're still in, a lot of information is actually coming to us. I'll maybe give an example of one of the partnerships that we have with the Ministry of ICT and an implementing partner called Sendfree that is really advising, also a partner to AFR, that is advising the government, and will be producing dashboards to show what the financial market looks like. And one of the key reports that came out some time back was how mobile money, scrapping the fee, from mobile money, what it meant for business. And I think it's worth to really recognize what the government is doing. And with the recent announcement, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, or if not last week, removing the fee from, moving money from a bank account to mobile money. And this is really informed by data. So I think that's an important element. And how do we ensure that, we use the data to help decision making, but how do we also give it back? So a report like this one, how does it get to the young person? How is it used? And so I think that's one element, how we maximize the data that we have, how it informs what we do as different partners on this call and others. I think the second element is around the different ways of access to finance. I think we've talked about the banks and the challenges. What are the other opportunities? How about the SACCOs? How about the MFI? And again, understanding as well what are the different alternatives. And I think I will not dwell too much on that because the PS mentioned it, and we know that there is a lot happening. We understand in the ecosystem, Rwanda Finance Limited, but already with what we have on the ground, beyond, and being able to accompany, I would say, the young entrepreneurs. Not everything has to go to the commercial bank. That's what we hear. That's what the data shows us. How about the other institutions that are closer to the rural community, for example, and how do we support them as including the foundation and others, to strengthen these other institutions so that we give alternatives to the entrepreneurs. And I think the last thing I would say is how do we coordinate? How do we really, the synergies? And I think that's something that also has been talked about by all the panelists. I think what we're hearing today, there's a lot of different initiatives. Our ability to integrate, our ability where integration can happen, how are business development service providers working with financial service providers? Currently, what we are learning and what we've seen with our programming, we seem to be working in silos. How do we make sure we close the silos and really complement each other? How do we catalyze what already exists so that when the young entrepreneur or are coming and trying to understand all the plethora of services that we offer, it eases their pathways. And if we are able to collaborate, if we are able to synergize a lot of activities and together really outreach to the young people we're trying to target, I think we will be doing them a good service, and we will be able to all together reach the impact of financial inclusion for the young people of Rwanda.
Thank you, Rika. And unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. So we're running out of time. So my next question, I'm going to be asking one question to each of the panelists from our audience. And you have exactly 1.5 minutes. In fact, no, I'm being generous. You have exactly 1 minute to answer that question that I'm going to be throwing to you from our comment section before I can throw to our host and CEO to give us his closing remarks as well. And Mrs. Caritas, I would like to start with you. And this is regarding the employment issue, and employment being a strong predictor of financial inclusion. Now, how best can we shift the agribusiness mindset among young people?
Thank you. I think this is a journey that already started with the youth forums. It's already good what the YAF is doing. I think we have role models to the youth, such as Regis himself and others who actually proved that agribusiness is one of the potential employment creation area, and it actually proved that what you started saying about the blue-collar jobs, they are actually more beneficial as compared to white-collar jobs. And it is a process that started also by the Minister of Youth. The Minister of Agriculture is they are also doing well in this regard. But I think what is needed to be increased is the synergy of actors. All actors should be playing a role that is actually involving youth themselves. Financial institutions, public and private institutions need to come together and plan, implement, and have the opportunity like this one to share information, to share data on how the progress is being made. I think the synergy will be one of the area that is actually needed to be worked on. And information sharing. Information sharing is another aspect that needs to be reinforced. For instance, you might know that different solutions were proposed, example, the BDF, but most of the youth still think that, one morning they can get up and, go to BDF and get a guarantee or a loan. Most of them actually know that BDF is a loan provider, which is not true. So I think sharing information is something that we need to work on with the youth. Otherwise, they have, I think the shift of mindset is so good. So now it is good as compared to the last 5-10 years, where they used to think that a good job is sitting in a ministry or in an NGO. I think things have changed. Now they need to be informed, and we need to get together as actors to ensure that we make a significant impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Caritas. The Permanent Secretary, Mr. Emmanuel Vigenimana, I want to bring you into the conversation with with a closing question for you, and it comes in from Rose Nathan. He asks he says first that we see the research from that 38% of the youth are earning their livelihoods from farming versus 31% of the rest. Now, this is indeed a good news to see more and more youth are taking up agriculture, and this needs to be encouraged. His question, though, is what is being done at policy level to support them. It will be good to hear of BDF and BRD Guarantee Fund initiatives. He's giving you an answer already, but going back to that question, what is being done at policy level to support them?
Thank you very much, and thank you. I don't see the name of someone.
Nathan Rose.
Yes, sure. The agribusiness and its entire value chain is still a potential sector that may employ many youth. So what we need here, what we need to understand at policy level is that as we intend to create more jobs for our new entrant to the labor market, we have to consider agribusiness as one of the potential sector, not only for job creation, but also we have to keep in consideration that this is one of the resilient sector if it comes to the pandemic like COVID-19. We have seen it. It had convinced that this sector. We're convinced that this sector is resilient. Is one of the sectors that could continue even when the pandemic was hitting bad. And now we need to introduce incentives. If I mean incentives is not distributing the free money, I'm making a reference to introducing the infrastructure around accessing the finance. One of the strategy the government of Rwanda is using is, of course, what the discussants raised, the Business Development Fund. They have several products related to agribusiness, and the role of the ministry is to mobilize the young people to make use of these products, and they are really several, and they have different terms. Of course, there is a need also to the information. The young people need to understand the procedures, need to know what BDF is offering as a notion to support access to finance, but also we understand that we need to discuss with these institutions such BDF and BRD to bring on board the young people to understand what they need, to understand the challenges around accessing the services. And with that hope that through the partnership with these support institutions, with other actors such as even Access to Finance Rwanda, such as and I really thank the MasterCard and FAO and other actors. They really understand the role, the role of, or the signification of bringing on board the young people, and even to consider them in this very critical sector of agribusiness when it comes to, one, creating jobs, second, building resilience of our economies, and thirdly, sustainable development for our country. And I thank you very much and submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Permanent Secretary Emmanuel and Bijenimana for even making the time for us and for answering those questions. We still see your comments coming through, Hannah. We've seen you echo Caritas and Rika's remarks as well. But there's a question for you here, Rika, from the audience. And the question is, it looks like it's a 2-in-1, but you have 1 minute, so 30 seconds each. Now, how will this presentation be practically implemented so that the youth understand the opportunities available to them? The second question being, it will be interesting to bring case studies to conceptualize whatever initiatives that is brought up. Otherwise, it remains theoretical. How do we make this practical? Rika.
Thank you, Arnold, for the 1 minute exam. I think I did see that question came earlier, and hopefully during the discussion we were able to bring in some examples, and maybe I bring back Florence, and I think what's important, and the question around the recommendation, what do we do next? We've said a lot of things, but maybe I'll, just give one in which related to one of the questions is how do we synergize? I think there was an element of how do we bring all the different initiatives, the policy. I think we have great policy. I'll speak to, for example, one of a new policy is an entrepreneurship development policy, which really launched, I think approved last year, if I'm not mistaken. And this provides a framework on how Rwanda would like to position itself as to improve or to develop entrepreneurship. And one of the activities or initiative that they want to bring in is coordination. And that speaks to, I think it's Hannah's question on how do we do this? I don't have a silver bullet, but certainly I think with this report and AFR or any other institution, we have an opportunity to actually make, as one of the recommendations of this, to make this a reality. And the coordination is looking at all the different players, incubators, business development service providers who have been growing, and which is great into the Rwandan market. But how do we ensure that these are not different silos again and increases that, but how do we work together? So I think we have the policy for that. We have the something that the government has stated wants to be done, and how, and as the MasterCard Foundation, we certainly is something that we would be interested in supporting, and the leadership, the government has provided, but what is this other institution that can bring it on board? I think if we're able to do that, we will reach it. And maybe I'll end with this, and I know I probably have gone beyond my 1 minute by this point, but this report comes 4 years after the 2016. I think if we're able to project ourselves in 2024 and say, what do we want the report to tell us? We don't want the 12% left behind. We want 100%, but we also want, transactions. We also want young people who are better employed so that they have the money and can be entrepreneurs. We want, a market system or financial sector that provides different options, that are youth in their mind. And if we agree on what we want to see in the 4 years, a report that comes out the next 4 years, then we can begin to work backwards and see how what we do today and every year and every month and every week makes us get a step closer to having that 4-year report that looks much, much better than this. And I think if we're able to do that together, we'll be celebrating in 2024 with the young people at the front, telling us the story of success, from them. And with that, I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rika. Very passionate, please. There, 2024, there, you are already throwing the task to Mr. Jean Bosco Iyachu, who is also our host today. He started this 4 years ago. You are telling him, in another 3 years' time, and more needs to be done. We need the data. On that, I would love to thank our panel of experts. Just to reiterate, the country head MasterCard Foundation, Mrs. Rika Rigamba, Mrs. Caritas Kairisi, that's the National Project Coordinator for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, specifically the Integrated Country Approach theme there, and also the Permanent Secretary at the Minister of Youth and Culture, Mr. Emmanuel Bijenimana. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making the time, for speaking to us, for helping us break this down. And I hope we will have you on as this series continues to progress. Now, without any further ado, I would like to welcome back our host today, the CEO, Mr. Jean Bosco Iyachu. But as I welcome him, I want to ask him a question. Mr. Iyachu, my question to you, it comes also from the audience today, and it comes from one person called Grace. She says, hello, I haven't read the report. Yes, Grace, because we haven't yet shared it, but we're sharing it shortly. But I would like to know the study focused on youth in agribusiness only or other sectors. And the other question is, if there was a comparison, do the youth in different sectors experience the same challenges regarding access to finance, or it's mostly the youth in agribusiness? Mr. Jean Bosco, other sectors, or it's just agribusiness?
Yes, thank you very much, Arnold. Thank you, Grace, for your question. A very important question indeed. The Finscope survey really focused on different sectors, not just agriculture. But once again, we know the value of this sector in our economy. So that's probably that you saw the conversation taking that angle. But clearly we have youth in different sectors. So we can, when you go deeper into the full report, you will see that there are youth in other sectors that are still facing the same challenges. So it's not really specific to agriculture. I think most of the aspects of or constraints that are there hindering youth financial inclusion, they cut across different sectors. So we will soon launching the SME report, Finscope report soon, and we'll actually clarify and show the SMEs in different sectors and show the portion of youth there and what kind of challenges they are facing. So stay tuned for that. It was a very insightful and interesting conversation. And Arnold has done a very good job, really, because I wouldn't have managed better. Thank you very much, Arnold. So I wanted really to reiterate the thanks to, first and foremost, the attendees, the participants in this conversation. Without you, we wouldn't have really had a meaningful conversation. The panel wouldn't be talking because we talked and shared those insights because you are there. And thank you for always attending our lead series events. So we have come up with a very interesting and well thought through recommendations and ideas. And this will certainly guide what we do next as stakeholders within this space. And Rika alluded to something very important, which is really coordination and synergies. I think that is really needed if we are to see a different picture for years to come. I wanted also to thank the panelists. Thank you very much for your insights, your valuable contributions, and most importantly for sharing the plans you have to support youth in Rwanda. So that's well noted, and we shall continue the conversation to see how we move to more practical actions. Arnold, thank you, and thank you team, AFR, Mastercard Foundation and the ministry. You've done a great job, and thank you for organizing all of us to have this conversation. So I wanted to close with one important remark. Really, we looked at the numbers in this report and we talked about different challenges they are facing. I wanted to remind ourselves that behind these numbers that you see, there are faces and souls of youth that hugely need our support. So let's take this home, really, because it's not about the numbers, but there are people behind those numbers, and these people need our support. So as we design interventions, as we design solutions, let's know and think about those youth, especially those in rural areas that are facing different challenges. So with these closing remarks or words, I want to declare the Youth Financial Inclusion Report launched for use by different stakeholders, as it is a public good that we have been providing to the market. So you will get it, visit our social media channels and website, and you will see the report, and we invite you really to use the recommendations for tangible actions going forward. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO and our host today, Mr. John Bosco Yachu, for those closing remarks. And just before we sign off, I would like to also thank Ephraim Rutagarama. He presented the findings of this report. Allow me to thank again Mr. Regis Umjiraneza, Vice Chair of Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs at PSF and member of the Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum, who had a special contribution for us earlier. Our panel of experts led by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Emmanuel Bijanimana, Country Head Mastercard Foundation, Mrs. Rika Rigamba, and Mrs. Caritas Kailisla, the National Project Coordinator for the Food and Agriculture Organization Integrated Country Approach. They are in Rwanda for also making the time. I would like to thank the Mastercard Foundation, the Ministry of Youth and Culture. The team had access to Finance Rwanda that has ensured that we have a smooth sailing for day one of our LEAD series, LEAD standing for Learn, Engage, Act, and Develop. Thank you for joining us. This webinar has been organized as part of the celebration of the Youth International Day and the launch of the Finscope 2020 Youth Thematic Report under the theme, The Status of Youth Financial Inclusion in Rwanda. It was organized, as I mentioned earlier, as part of the LEAD series, and this is the first version for this month. There will be more coming up later. Don't forget, tweet us, Access to Finance Rwanda, that's at AFR Rwanda on Twitter, at Mastercard Foundation, as well at Rwanda Youth for the Ministry of Culture, and if you want to get in touch with me, at The Real Quizera. Thank you and have a blessed rest of your day.